An assembly line manufacturing process values conformity and is assessed by the degree to which it can most efficiently produce the same product over and over again. But when it comes to revolutionizing the manufacturing sector, it is quite the opposite. It is all about breaking norms and challenging conventions in a complex sector with a broken supply chain. With its Make in India for the World mission, Zetwerk is bringing together OEMs, EPC firms, and large enterprises with its network of small and medium companies to manufacture components for a wide range of industries. On this episode of Disruptor Dialogues, we catch up with Amrit Acharya, co-founder and CEO of Zetwerk, on his journey of transforming India into a manufacturing superpower. Hi Amrit, thanks for your time on Disruptor Dialogues. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So my first question to you, Amrit, SMEs are clearly at the heart of your business. How did you go about really identifying the challenges in the manufacturing space?
Some of it was familiar with us with our first job. So my first job was at this large company, ITC. There, my first role was to build a new factory. And every time we were looking for manufacturing partners, it was always a struggle. We didn't have institutional knowledge. We didn't know which part to get from whom. And even once we figured out where to get the parts from, we were always never sure when we will get it. Our suppliers would sometimes say 30 days and then we would get product in 60 days. And in that whole 60-day period, we had a lot of anxiety. Are we going to get it on time? Is it going to be the right quality? So combination of these experiences made us empathize with the problem statement that we are solving today.
Even in terms of what really kept you motivated to solve for these pain points, COVID sort of created a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
It sort of exposed some of the fragility in the supply chain in the sector and also the over-dependence, on a single source country like China. So what are the pain points that you're working on?
Yeah, I think over the last 3 years, the big paradigm shift in the business is we have shifted from doing lots of one-off requirements for large companies to doing recurring requirements which are more product-based. And you're right, a lot of these used to come from single-source countries before. Even India, you take an example, every electronics product consumed in India 3 years back was an imported product and it was just not sustainable. And 3 years back, the Indian government decided that, look, we want to localize some of that. The headline here is Apple setting up a big part of their iPhone supply chain in India, but it's fairly an industry-wide trend. There is a massive push that if that supply is available in the country, how do we make that accessible to large companies globally? And it feels like we're just starting. Like if you look at some of the high-level data points, exports of electronics in India to global markets is growing north of 100-200% year-on-year at a country level. The consumption of these products in India is growing 20-30% year-on-year. So when you combine these two dynamics, more products are being consumed in India, and hence why not we have a dynamic where more of them are made in India as well.
Now Zetwerk has built this massive network of SMEs. How do you ensure that this network of SMEs and your suppliers make revenue at the end of the day?
Yeah, when you look to the typical SME entrepreneur, they have 1 or 2 customers only. And these 1 or 2 customers are people they have prior relationships with. In my co-founder's case, his father ran a family business in manufacturing. He was an employee at this large company called BHEL, and when he set up a manufacturing business, BHEL was his first customer. And that's a very typical story for a lot of manufacturing entrepreneurs. It's either their former employer or some relationship they have built. And hence what happens because of that, they run underutilized capacities. They will run their factories at 40-50%. Because their customers are not giving them orders throughout the year. They're giving them orders few times a year. So that insight that there is excess capacity available, you don't have to create more capacity. Yeah. How do you bring them online? When you're bringing more supply to the market, but demand is still roughly the same, you're bringing prices down by having more competitive pricing for discovering the same type of demand. And by bringing more supply to the market, you're actually creating more efficiencies and who could be faster as well. So time, quality and cost, these are the 3 main variables buyers look for from manufacturing point of view, and bringing more supply to the market is always better. That has been the core insight of the business.
Right. You just spoke about efficiencies, and some of your clients are large ones, leading industries and consumer enterprises. So how do you ensure that quality, meeting deadlines, and also giving them that competitive lead time, because they are very demanding clients?
Yeah. No, so the software plays a big role here, and marrying software plus manufacturing is really the heart of the business. I'll give an example. One of our customers wants us to make, let's say, a steel frame for a solar panel. This is going below the solar panel. This is a very large SKU for us. So what we do is we have a 10-step process, which is a digital recipe. Step 1 is buy the steel. Step 10 is dispatch the product. And there are 8 steps in between, which are work in progress. We track against each of these micro steps. We expect our suppliers to update whether things have been made on time as per each specific step. Previously, what used to happen, customers would give an order for 30 days. They only have an update on the 0th day and the 30th day. They have nothing in between. But we are breaking down into 10 steps of 3 days each. So we know where things are getting bottlenecked, if any, and hence where should we spend time resolving. We can be proactive versus being reactive. So all of that is possible through software. Similarly on quality, like what are the things that typically go wrong? What are the historical quality rejection rates by supplier? These are all data that we maintain. And hence, depending on the criticality, we can allocate incremental demand to the best performing suppliers. And also, we can diagnose when things go wrong before they go wrong.
So, a typical traditional sector like manufacturing that has been turned around with these software solutions. But at the beginning, how did you, go and pitch to some of these large clients like an L&T, Tata, all legacy full stack conventional industrial houses? How difficult was it to pitch to them and get their buy-in?
Yeah, look, it's always tough when you're introducing a new type of offering to the market. But I think what resonated really well with all of our customers was this is a problem that they have been facing for a long period of time. And in some shape or form, people had accepted that this is how it is. In a way, the biggest competition we have is that this is how it is mindset, and this is how it is for last 10 years, and hence why it should be different. Of course, policy has made a big role. We started the company in 2018. GST had just been implemented 1 year ago. So we never had a pre-GST, post-GST era. But what was happening was a lot of our customers were transitioning into a post-GST supply chain. What was an example of this is most large companies, depending on where they're headquartered, if a company is headquartered in Delhi, they would have had bulk of their supply chain in and around the Delhi NCR region. But today that doesn't make sense. The best supplier in the country could be in the south, but because of GST, pre-GST cost of doing business, it was just difficult for a south vendor to service the north. Today that playing field got leveled, and when we were starting the company, this value proposition resonated really well. That look, we will help you expand your supply chain from a regional supply chain to a national supply chain. And 3 years back, we did that with COVID, when we said we'll expand your supply chain from a single source country to a truly international supply chain. So some of these macro shifts, policy have played a big role. But the core promise that we can make a solution which is better, faster, cheaper, I think that resonated really well with our customers.
Now, talking about expansion, you also make custom-made products. You've expanded into, you service almost 20 plus industries, wide range of capabilities from smoldering to fabrication, die casting. How do you sort of manage all of this across industries? Steel fabrication, aerospace, and t-shirts also from what I hear.
No, so the simple framework is, there is underlying capability. Let's say steel fabrication as an example. The simplest way I'll describe it is you take 2 straight lines, you weld it, you make an L. That's what steel fabrication is. It's there everywhere around us. You take a transmission tower, that's a steel fabricated product. You take a street light pole, that's a fabricated product. So it's just that capability has a wide range of use cases. So we look for what are the key capabilities that we have built as an org. Steel fabrication could be one, die castings could be one, and then we see what are the end users applications that these have. A similar example is 2.5, 3 years back, there was a slowdown in auto. And a lot of the traditional auto supply chain who are machining guys, their shops were idle because auto demand had come down because of the chip shortage globally. But those same suppliers have ability to serve the aerospace and defense division because it's the fundamental capability is the same. And we were able to transition a lot of traditional auto SMEs to look at a completely new industry, which is aerospace and defense. And it was only possible by deep understanding of the capability of these suppliers. So when we onboard suppliers, we say that, look, what are the machines do you have? What are the customers you have served? What are the products you have made? What are the quality systems that you have? And then when you underwrite it from that angle, the existing demand is not necessarily completely representative of the full range of things that those manufacturing facilities have capabilities to do.
Now talking about the growth trajectory that we've seen of Zetwerk, I think in your first 3 years of operations you turned EBITDA positive. Give us a sense of what have been the key growth drivers, the trajectory you've seen so far, and essentially how did you go about deciding to expand into so many areas? Was
Sure.
it organic? Was it a conscious decision?
Sure. The business started by helping large Indian companies with one-off requirements which are capex driven. So an example of this is one of our customers building a big factory. They need a lot of machinery for that, which is one time in nature. Once the factory is built, they don't need that again. So that is how we started 5 years back. But today, what we call recurring production scale business, where we're making the same part again and again, that is almost 60% of the company's revenue. The key insight here is this is being driven by what we call reshoring of supply chains. So this is applicable both for US, India, and now increasingly to Europe as well. These are large economies which were dependent on single source, have now decided at a strategic level that they want to diversify. And diversify does not mean necessarily all of it to India, but diversify it globally. So an example of this is we help our US customers with Indian supply chain, but we also help them with Mexico and with US. So what happens is for the first batch of product, the first batch goes from US, the customer gets their product in 15 days, 20 days. It's slightly more expensive. The next batch comes from Mexico, which is again slightly cheaper than US, but again faster than India. But the remaining 80% comes from India, which is let's say cost competitive. So from a US customer's point of view, they're getting just-in-time product, but with the India pricing. And we call this a blended supply chain, that it is India-focused, India-centric, but really tapping into global opportunities that are available. And this is something which had never been done in the world before, that people were just reliant on a single source and getting things done. A good example of where this really helped, a few months back there was this whole Red Sea crisis, where if you moved product from India, you couldn't go through the Suez Canal, you had to go across the Horn of Africa. It increased shipping costs temporarily. So what we were able to do during this time is we temporarily increased production from Mexico. So our customers who worked with us had zero impact on their supply chain. But customers who were not working with us had 2-3 months of a lot of volatility. So really being global and being resiliency as a value proposition, in addition to time, quality, and cost, is becoming an increasingly important thing in today's day and age.
What is the dominant industry that you serve? The key components and products that this recurring thing that you spoke about, and what is the say the monthly volume or order book that you get?
While we were doing a lot of things over the last few years, I think over the next few years we'll see a lot of focus. Almost a third of revenues today at the company's level comes from the renewables industry, which is solar and wind primarily. We serve this both for India and US markets, but we are just entering Europe as well. An example of this is for a large wind turbine manufacturer, we are just starting to make something called a nacelle. Nacelle is like the nose of the wind turbine on which the blades are attached. Again, this used to all come from non-Indian supply chain, but we are opening up an Indian supply chain for this large European company. We are looking at solar in a big way. Solar is already a big part of our revenue. But then what are the ancillary areas around renewables broadly? So storage is a big one. As more and more renewables comes into the grid, the requirement for storage will increase because renewables does not operate throughout the day. It operates only certain hours of the day. And looking at ancillary industries like EVs and EV components. We recently won a pretty large order from a large Indian oil and gas distributor to set up EV chargers in their petrol pumps. So we do see that this whole greenification of the supply chain is a big theme. Beyond this, electronics in India, we are seeing huge Make in India tailwinds today. Every brand you talk to wants to move at least a quarter of their supply chain to India. So we are at an interesting point where there's billions of dollars of demand, but not enough capacity. That creates a great opportunities for companies like us to bridge that divide. So electronics will be the second big one. And the last thing is aerospace and defense. Again, going through a similar journey where every 70% of products that India consumes are imported from other countries. Again, that's just not sustainable. So we will see that over the next 10 years, a big part of that supply chain will get localized.
Now coming to your international presence, I think 20 to 25% of your business comes from the US, as you mentioned. You're spreading out more into Europe and the Middle East. How did you go about identifying and evaluating these potential markets?
See, it was easy for us because we were already supplying the same products to Indian customers.
Okay.
So we started US 3 years back. Our first major expansion into the US was the solar industry. So an example SKU is we make the steel frames below the solar panels. These are on which the steel frames on which the panels are mounted. We were already servicing that to Indian customers. And then during COVID, we started getting a lot of inbound from US customers for the same product. So we already had the supply chain in place. We just had to start figuring out how to do international shipping. Last year, we supplied almost 8 gigawatt worth of steel frames to the US market. The overall market was maybe 30-35 gigawatt. So we were 25-30% of the market for these products. In India, we supplied 1 gigawatt worth of solar panels last year. I think the Indian market would have been close to 10 gigawatt. So we were almost 10% of the market. So when your markets are going through a growth phase, like the renewables industry is, and there is a supply-demand mismatch, it creates an amazing opportunity to have high market leadership in a short amount of time. So that is one of the reasons why we think that this is an interesting area to be in. I'm not an economist, but in 10 years from now, I think it's easy for both you and I to agree that there'll be more solar, more wind than what it is today. So it is an easy market to bet the company's trajectory on.
Sure. So, being in so many sectors and with the expansion that you've seen, what's been the impact on your revenue and client adoption also on a year-on-year basis? Where do your current revenues stand?
Sure. Yeah, we have not announced our FY24 results yet, but FY23 we did around 13,000 crores of GMV overall, which was almost a doubling from the year before. And the general path is, look, we are present in categories which are still in its infancy in some shape or form. Electronics is a 2-year-old industry in India from the way it is structured today. Like it already existed for 20 years, but the whole Make in India move is 2 years old. Renewables again, 3 months back, we had something called ALMM, which says that you can only buy certain products from approved Indian vendors, which means that half of supply just got evaporated overnight. And similarly in aerospace and defense, the government keeps publishing a list of products which you cannot import anymore. They're negative import products. So we are just seeing that if the market size is, let's say, X today, it is probably going to become 100X over the next 10 years. The interesting thing that will happen now is a lot of manufacturing that is happening in India is assembly-led. I think the next decade will be a little bit more focused on components. That is where we are spending time. Assembly gives you a lot of distribution that, okay, we are working with 100 customers for whom we are getting the final product made, but what are the nuts and bolts that go into that product itself? This place we are in, aerospace and defense, it is an R&D facility. We are creating new products that have not been made in India before. And we see the future of the company more going in that direction.
Sure. What would you attribute to this meteoric rise in terms of what are the things you did to achieve this success, or what is the key moat that you currently have?
No, I think software plays a big role, and we are very unique that way. I think, look, in a way, we are competing against traditional manufacturers who have been around for much longer than us, and some of them are much larger than us also. And no single factory can make everything, and no single factory can have large volumes, infinite volumes. So there is the promise that we are putting out into the market that Zetwerk is a company which has infinite range and infinite scale. Look, today you're producing a certain quantity, but you have a spike because one of your products is selling really well. We have the ability to flex up manufacturing capacity overnight. And we have many examples of this. One example of this is for an electronics brand in India. We were able to move 30% of their supply chain from China to India in a year, which previously they had taken almost 2 years to do in a not so successful way. The reason of this is software plays a big role, but accessing flexible manufacturing capacity, which can go up and down, is a second big part of it. The third big part of it is just range itself. Like we have seen many examples of our customers who were buying mechanical parts from us. They were shocked to discover that we also do electronics and said, look, why am I buying 10 things from 10 different people Why can you just provide me the entire component itself, which is a both mechanical and an electronics part? We're already seeing the blended supply chain play a big role. Having suppliers not just in India, but globally, that also makes a big differentiation.
Sure, and even in terms of moving up the value chain, we've spoken about how the supply chain is broken. How are you planning to plug some of those gaps? Are you looking at it in a big way in terms of logistics, procurement, working capital needs?
These are large problem statements in itself. But we will partner with other companies who are solving all these other problems. What companies can benefit by partnering with us is we have access to 1,000+ large companies in India and US who buy from us regularly. And hence we can plug in a direct way with other companies who offer related services. Let's say logistics is one of them. We are a pretty large exporter from India to the US today. So we have partnered with lots of software startups, with logistics provider startups, so that they can take on that part of the problem statement in a plug and play model. That is one example. Working capital could be another.
Sure. Now, I also wanted to know if you have a problem of plenty in a sense, like you're in this B2B space, you partner with a lot of suppliers. How do you decide who to work with? And what are the key considerations in meeting the demand and supply, in this model?
Yeah. No, we do have a problem of plenty in some sense, and which is why you will see that over the next 3 to 5 years, we are concentrating our efforts on 3 industries. Renewables is one of them, electronics, and then aerospace and defense / precision parts. We think that these 3 industries itself will drive 70-80% of the company's revenue. Because these are once in a generational things, like this entire decoupling that is happening between US and other economies. I don't think it will happen again in our lifetimes. We are seeing this pattern happen in other traditional industries as well. I'll give an example in railways. Railways is something which has been there for the last 30-40 years in India. But railways is going through a massive paradigm shift in terms of the amount of safety that we want to introduce into Indian railways, the modernization that we're bringing in through bullet train infrastructure. These are again things where India has been dependent on other countries for the technology, but there's a big mandate today through the current administration that how do we have local technology be a big part of this. We have played a small role, like in the recent bullet train thing between Bombay and Ahmedabad. The lot of girders have to be made through which the bullet train passes. You'll not believe this, but all of these girders used to come from Japan because these have to be made to a specific strength to accommodate the high velocity through which the train passes. And us as a company, we were the first to localize the largest girder, almost 130 meters, in partnership with the Japanese technology companies to make it in India for the first time.
Great, Amrit. It's been super interesting to really understand how Zetwerk has shaken up an age-old, complex, heavy sector like manufacturing. Really curious to also understand what it looks like on the ground.
Yeah, it will be amazing. Let's go in and have a tour at our aerospace and defense facility.
So we're here at the Pinaka Aerospace Solutions Center, which is a company that has been strategically acquired by Zetwerk to tap into and expand its aerospace and defense manufacturing business here in India. And Amrit, if you can explain, the range of products manufactured in this facility, what really is the story behind this in terms of, being at the forefront of nation building in a sense?
Sure. This is a R&D center. Everything that we do here used to be an imported product 2 years ago. So these are parts that go into the aircraft, and 70% of parts that are consumed in the Indian aerospace and defense industry are from imports. Over the last 2-3 years, there's a big mandate that we should not rely on imports. So the mandate is how do we localize various parts of the aircraft to be made in India and also designed in India. I think the design part is especially important. It is not enough that they are just made in India, but the IP should be within India. I think that is the big thing that we're doing here. I can share some examples, like the parts that you see here, these 4 items, they're all the same. They are called LRUs, line replaceable units. These specific items control the flow of fuel into the aircraft. So there's various sensors. They pick up in data points like the air pressure and a bunch of other data points to decide how much fuel should go into the aircraft at any given point in time. What you see on the right, this one is how it used to look before when we used to import this. And after this, we have localized it and made it this. So you can see that it is much smaller.
Yeah.
It is way more compact. It consumes fewer parts, but it delivers the same functionality and the same form. So it is also lighter in weight. So
So this is the imported and this is the
yes,
localized one. Okay.
yeah. So this specific part controls the amount of fuel that goes into the aircraft. That's the function that this plays. And while we have made it to service the Indian market, these kind of aircraft fly globally, so we can supply the same parts to global economies which consume similar types of aircraft. This specific part, this measures the altitude of the aircraft. Again, very simple item, but again, these are parts that we used to import. So the idea was when these items break, we are always reliant on the country which services that part to provide us the spare. We don't have control over the timelines. They also charge a very high cost. So with one stone, we are able to accomplish two goals, which is A, localize the production. So the IP is in India. It is lower from a pricing point of view. It is faster to deliver also because the supply chain is all in India. These are again called NVCPT. These are again items which measure the voltage of the aircraft while the aircraft is performing various functions. So just simple items. We take them for granted. We don't imagine how they run, but all of these used to come from third-party countries before. The challenge is A, we don't get the service, and B, a lot of these countries have also lost the know-how of these products itself because these came 20 years ago, 30 years ago. The people who build those products have retired. And so a lot of reverse engineering, a lot of first principles R&D is required to get these products to market.
Wow, that's really interesting. You mentioned simple but really key and crucial, to the entire thing. So how deep are you going into the A&D space? What kind of investments are you making? Even in terms of expansion, I think drone manufacturing is another key area within this space.
Yeah, I think the ultimate goal of the Indian economy should be to make aircraft in India, which are Indian IP. And Tejas was one version of that, which is an Indian aircraft for the aerospace and defense industry. Drones is a very interesting one because it is a new market. There is, of course, different countries have their own version of drones. There's a company called Anduril in the US, which also makes their own thing. There is a big white space for an Indian company to create unmanned aerial vehicle. Like it can be a drone, it can be anything else, but something which does not require a human pilot. I think that product is early stages in its global infancy in terms of the amount of R&D investments that have gone in globally, and hence we have a real shot to compete.
Are you also looking at setting up your own independent facilities over and above the network that you have of suppliers?
We have done it in the electronics business. We have two facilities we operate in Delhi for assembly and components of parts that go into various electronics products. Our philosophy is if something exists already, we don't want to recreate it. Sure. So for a lot of manufacturing economy in India, supply chains do exist and they're reasonably deep. But in electronics, we noticed that depth was not there relative to the demand that is there in the market. From our point of view, we can say, we can wait 5 years for the depth to be created, or we can play a catalyzing role to create that depth on our own. We are very attached to the problem we are solving, which is getting high quality products made on time at the lowest price. If we can do it in a partnership model, we'll of course prefer that. But if we are not able to do it in the partnership model, we are open to create.
Sure. Like now, even when you look at the broader aspect of, providing the efficiencies that you spoke of earlier, you are virtually saying that, you have no minimum order book, unlimited production capacity. How are you doing all of this? If you can tell us how, you're leveraging tech to enable all of this.
Sure. When you're working with 10,000 suppliers who are distributed A, across India, B, globally, it adds an additional order of magnitude of complexity. Yeah. Because everything has to work in sync for the customer experience to be delightful. So orchestrating that entire supply chain experience, not just for the supplier partners we work with, but then coordinating with some of the in-house things we do, and also coordinating it with our suppliers' suppliers. Our suppliers also buy a lot of logistics, our suppliers buy a lot of commodities. Just making sure this whole thing works in sync is easier said than done, and in fact, I would say that we have gotten to where we are because of it, but we still have a long way to go in terms of perfecting it. And the idea is, like, this is not something we're doing just for ourselves. We are very willing to open it up to other companies as well to partner with us to leverage the fulfillment infrastructure that we have built, in some ways similar to what Amazon did for e-commerce, where a lot of fulfillment they do on their own, but they really opened up the ecosystem for third-party people to partner.
Yeah.
Our vision is to create that platform, driven through software and driven through all these touch points that we are able to integrate, and really create an IP that is not just for us, but for the entire economy.
Sure. Now, when it comes to customer satisfaction and retention, how do you really drive that loyalty in a space like this? You do claim that your on-time delivery is also about 80%.
Right.
How do you raise the bar higher from here?
So there's two steps to it. One is, in India, the bar is pretty low. I think when I was working at ITC, I would get on-time products maybe 30-40% of the time. So one is you measure yourselves relative to what other offerings are. So we're already saying we're twice as better than what other people are doing. The second thing is, even if you're not, for the remaining 20%, you communicate to the customer proactively. I think that is often good enough. Like, look, things happen. Manufacturing is Murphy's Law. Everything that can go wrong does go wrong, because there's just too many moving parts, and moving huge volumes of products from location A to location B is a complex task. So people understand that. But what truly gives customer delight is, okay, when that 20% of the time when you are, let's say, behind schedule, at least communicate where you are behind schedule, why, what went wrong, what are you doing to fix it. I think these are things which sound basic, but are not a prevalent thing in our industry. So providing certainty in a world of uncertainty is what we're trying to do.
Definitely welcome, as long as they know what's happening. I think that makes a big difference. Now when it comes to the manufacturing sector overall, you've been in this space for 5-6 years plus. Would you say that you've built a significant disruptive influence, and what sort of impact has that had on the traditional manufacturing landscape overall? Yeah,
look, we measure it in many ways. Like, almost 90% of our revenue comes from our existing customers. So our customers keep coming back at the highest level. That must mean we're doing something right, because customers prefer to work with us. The second thing that's happening is, our business was always a lot of one-off orders, but now we're getting annual contracts from our customers. Sometimes we get 4-year contracts, 5-year contracts. The reason customers do that is they want to make sure that we are in some ways prioritizing them, and they are trying to lock the capacities as we have created for them for a longer period of time. So customer experience drives the business. What we have built is a horizontal platform that can integrate designs of different industries and convert that into product. What the country is missing is more and more designs which are local. I think that is a big white space that over the next 10-15 years can be occupied by Indian startups. And it is across a wide range of things. Like, we showed some examples. These are products that are there everywhere around us. We just need to pause and think, okay, how did they get here in the first place? I'll give a very basic example. For a US customer, we used to make nail clippers. A nail clipper is an extremely basic product, but before this, it used to get done in other countries. So if something as basic as that can be localized and made in India, then you can imagine the opportunities are so immense. Yeah,
it's like strange, but all these curious cases come up. Now, lastly, in terms of giving back to your ecosystem partners or enabling them, I know that you have a build program. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Zetwerk Build is our way of giving back. The idea is, hardware startups are one of the toughest kind of companies you can build. Software, there's a bunch of things that are relatively under your control. So we want to take the burden of manufacturing away from hardware startups, focus on design. This is probably why you started the company in the first place. You want to design and bring a new product to market, which is more cutting edge and innovative. The moment you've designed the first prototype, I mean, I'll go back to Steve Jobs and when they designed the Apple one, the last thing on their mind was how do I make it at huge scale? The idea was, how do I bring a truly cutting edge product to market? I think the similar ethos is there with most innovators. They want to bring a new product. So our pitch is, we will partner with you on the manufacturing leg. You focus your energies on your creative part, which is the things that you enjoy. We've done it for a bunch of different companies. They're robotics companies, they're electronics brand which made smart rings. You can see these companies are really flourishing because incremental dollars goes into R&D versus supply chain.
Yeah. Great to have you on Disruptor Dialogues. Thank you so much. More power to you and kudos to what you've built here, Amrit. Thank you.